Just as there are local and domain users, there are local and domain groups, and they work a little differently from each other. Now, the purpose of groups is to be able to assign permissions to things. We do not apply group policy to groups, which sounds a little strange. We'll get into that later on in the course. But groups are used to assign permissions. So if I say have a finance group, I can give them permissions to certain finance folders and documents on my servers. If I have a production group, I can give them access to production folders and files that they need, but I can deny access to the finance folders and files. So that's how groups are used. So let's take a look at groups on both the local machine and on the domain. So groups on a local machine, I can get to it several different ways. I'm going to do it this way, lusrmgr.msc. So that's the MMC snap-in for local users. I like to just call them losers, loser manager. So here we go, users and groups. Here are the users. And as you can see, Roger, we saw that in another video. This was the only local account that I had ready to go on this. These are all shut down. Roger's the only one that is an active account right now. The others all have a little black arrow in them. And then I've got groups. And I can add groups. I can just right click on here and say new group, or right click on users and say new user. But those are local, and these are for permissions on the local machine. There are also domain groups, which are not created on the local machine here. These are created on the domain controller. So here's a domain controller, and I'm going to open up the server manager. Then I'm going to open up tools and Active Directory, users and computers. Now I know it doesn't say groups there, but we can create groups here as well. Here under users, if I right click it and I say new, one of the options I have is user, and one of the options I have is group. Now you can see that users and groups are all crammed into the same container here. Here's Fred, he's a user, and here's the administrator user, but here is a domain admins group, and the administrator may indeed be a member of that group. In fact, let's take a look and see. I'm going to go to this properties, and there should be a member of right here, member of. And yes, this admin is a member of the administrators group, domain admins group, domain users group, and so on and so on and so on. So these users are members of these various groups. And then I just assign a permission to a group, and all of the users who are a member of that particular group, those permissions will apply to them. So these are those groups. And right now, Fred, who was the one that I'm using to log in on this computer to the domain, Fred is not a member of any group. So let's make a group real quickly here for Fred. Let's put Fred, let's make a group here, and we'll talk about how these groups, what all these parts are later on, but for now we're just going to make a group. And I'm going to call this this group Picnic Committee. So we'll put him on the Picnic Committee group, and then we'll take Fred and we'll right click properties here and see members of, and then we'll add him, and we'll click advanced and find now, and we should be able to find now the Picnic Committee group. There we go, and Fred is now a member of the Picnic Committee group, and I can give the Picnic Committee access to the documents that they need to share in order to set up this year's picnic for the company. That's how groups work in Active Directory and on the local machine, and they are completely different from each other. One does not show up on the other. Domain groups don't show up on the local machine. Local groups don't show up on the domain.